The interpretation of narratives is to some extent subjective, because everyone can experience art differently. At the same time, using literary analysis, we can still explain the most reasonable meanings that the artist meant to convey or that the audience is likely to understand. To understand themes of any work of art, however, spoilers are involved. Heavy spoilers. So consider this your spoiler warning. Hades II, the sequel to the award-winning roguelite dungeon crawler from indie studio Supergiant Games, is a game with innovative gameplay and unique storytelling, not just because of Logan Cunningham's excellent narration, but also because the story aims to tackle many issues through its mythological setting. In the first video, part 1, we took a look at some of the more personal themes, smaller themes related to family conflict and its resolution. However, Hades II is not just about the intimate family story of the first game. It has gone bigger and better than its predecessor, expanding everything in epic proportions, including its themes. In this video, part 2, we are going to explore the grander themes of the game and answer the question, what can the Greek myths of Hades II explain to us about time and fate? Our first theme for today's video on time and fate in Hades II is that of the inability to change the past. Time is obviously a motif in the game, in the incarnation of Kronos himself, but also in many of the slogans, such as "Time cannot be stopped." The theme of the inability to change the past is established early on. At the beginning of the game, in a flashback, Hecate tells a young Melinoe that even if she accomplishes her task of destroying Kronos, nothing can restore the loss that she has felt.
Destroying Kronos shall not change the past, and the pain shall linger.
This theme is also echoed by Hades himself, who has regrets in how the gods dealt with Kronos. As he has aged, he finds that he understands and identifies with his father more and more, and wishes that they had resolved their differences, well, differently. Finally, Kronos himself expresses some regret as to how things turned out. When talking to Melinoe, he implies that he made mistakes, and wishes that he could have discussed sharing authority with his sons instead of engaging them in deadly conflict, being imprisoned in Tartarus, and finally starting this new war against Hades and Olympus.
But there is no undoing past mistakes.
The Bible doesn't talk about the inability to change the past very much, because Christianity is heavily focused on God being gracious and offering second chances. But there are some verses about the consequences of mistakes. Therefore, lift your drooping hands and straighten your weak knees, and make straight paths for your feet, so that what is lame may not be put out of joint, but rather be healed. Strive for peace with everyone, and for the holiness without which no one will see the Lord. See to it that no one fails to obtain the grace of God, that no root of bitterness springs up and causes trouble, and by it many become defiled, that no one is sexually immoral or unholy like Esau, who sold his birthright for a single meal. For you know that afterward, when he desired to inherit the blessing, he was rejected, for he found no chance to repent, though he sought it with tears. Hebrews chapter 12, verses 12 to 17. Like how Esau could not reverse his loss of birthright and blessing, Hecate, Melinoe, Kronos, Hades, and the Olympians also cannot undo the pain and misery that they have caused each other and others.
Make not their same mistakes.
However, even if you cannot change the past, you can learn from it and move forward, which is connected to our second theme. Our second theme related to time and fate for today's video on Hades II is that of the ability to learn from the past. This theme is a continuation or extension of the previous theme. We cannot change the past or undo mistakes we have made, as mentioned before. However, we can learn from them. In the game, the theme of learning from the past is developed through the main characters of the previous games, Zagreus and Hades, who have learned from their mistakes.
You sound just like Father. There was a time I never could communicate with him either, and I sorely wish that he was dead and gone. I'm glad I never had the capability.
Zagreus has learned from his conflict with his father that relationships can be reconciled and bridged, and therefore is hesitant to attack and kill a relative with whom he has so little understanding.
Nor is this situation remotely similar to the one you were in.
Oh, I don't know. My situation also involved family members desperately trying to kill each other.
Hades too seems to have learned from the experiences fighting his son. Instead of blaming Kronos like Melinoe and Hecate do, he suggests that all of them are to blame.
We did this to each other. Gods and titans, doomed to live forever, yet learn nothing all the while.
When Malinoe insists on her path of vengeance, he does not stop her, but also does not support it. In the true ending, rather than finishing her task of death to Kronos, Malinoe learns from her brother's experiences and puts her trust in his ability to bring about a reconciliation, just like he did in the first game. What follows is a change in a past timeline that, while not directly changing what happens in the present, allows them to experience what might have been, learning from an alternate past, which is what convinces Malinoe and Kronos to end their conflict against the wishes of Hecate. In the Bible, the Apostle Paul teaches believers that they should learn from the past. Now, these things took place as examples for us that we might not desire evil as they did. Do not be idolaters as some of them were, as it is written, the people sat down to eat and drink and rose up to play. We must not indulge in sexual immorality as some of them did, and 23,000 fell in a single day. We must not put Christ to the test, as some of them did, and were destroyed by serpents, nor grumble, as some of them did, and were destroyed by the destroyer. Now these things happened to them as an example, but they were written down for our instruction, on whom the end of ages has come. Therefore let anyone who thinks that he stands take heed, lest he fall. No temptation has overtaken you that is not common to man. God is faithful, and he will not let you be tempted beyond your ability. But with the temptation, he will also provide the way of escape, that you may be able to endure it. 1 Corinthians chapter 10, verses 6 to 13.
You would permit me such a chance? But I cannot change what already occurred.
Just as Christians should learn from past examples of the Bible, Malinoe and Kronos, like Zagreus and Hades, eventually learn from past experiences and resolve to move forward. While they are unable to change the past, they learn from it.
To move forward. That is all I have ever known.
Not everyone feels that it is easy to learn from the past, however. Some feel that they do not have the agency to do so, that their fate has been determined at birth.
It isn't fair.
Which is connected to our third theme for today's video. Our third theme for today's video on time and fate in Hades 2 is that of destiny being determined at birth. Throughout the game, this idea is developed in multiple ways. The motif of birthright is used to highlight this idea of destiny. For example, it is Malinoe's birthright as Princess of the Endworld to have access to Tartarus and the House of Hades. As a result, not even Kronos can bar her from using her privileges to access the express route.
You are resistant to his power, and he cannot bar you from your realm.
Similarly, the children of Nyx also feel as if they are destined by their birthrights to fulfill certain expectations. Eris feels that she could not turn out any way but the way that she did, due to the way that she was born, that her destiny was sealed by her mother as strife.
My mother's. It's Nyx's fault, that's whose. Because she literally made me what I am and what I'll always be. I could have been old age or friendship, but no. And I can't change my nature, no matter how hard I try.
Throughout the game, Malinoe suggests that she was destined at birth to defeat Kronos, although obviously there are some issues with the causality of a statement like that. Even so, she feels that it is true, that she trained her whole life to defeat him. Indeed, even Hecate encourages Malinoe and suggests that her victory is almost inevitable. Perhaps the greatest idea of destiny being determined is that even though Kronos was a rightful and arguably better ruler than the gods, that it was decreed by the fates themselves that the rightful rule of the world should be given over to the gods, something that Kronos obviously disagrees with. In the Bible, this idea of being born with a specific fate is what the Apostle Paul calls election, that God's sovereignty determines the fate of all. For this is what the promise said, "About this time next year I will return, and Sarah shall have a son." And not only so, but also when Rebekah had conceived children by one man, our forefather Isaac, though they were not yet born and had done nothing either good or bad, in order that God's purpose of election might continue, not because of works but because of him who calls, she was told, "The older will serve the younger." As it is written, "Jacob I have loved, but Esau I hated." You'll say to me then, why does he still find fault? For who can resist his will? But who are you, O man, to answer back to God? Will what is molded say to its molder, "Why have you made me like this?" Has the potter no right over the clay to make out of the same lump one vessel for honorable use and another for dishonorable use? What if God, desiring to show his wrath and to make known his power, has endured with much patience vessels of wrath prepared for destruction, in order to make known the riches of his glory for vessels of mercy? which he has prepared beforehand for glory, even us, whom he has called, not from the Jews only, but also from the Gentiles. Romans chapter 9, verses 10 to 13, and verses 19 to 24. Similar to Paul's description of God's election of Jacob over Esau and the metaphor of honorable and dishonorable vessels, many of the characters, such as Nemesis in Hades 2, struggle with this idea of birthright and being born into a destiny. This inner struggle is so great that it becomes an external struggle, a desire to break free from this destiny, which is our final theme for today's video. Our final theme for today's video on time and fate in Hades 2 is that of freedom from predetermined fate. As mentioned in the previous theme, the game spends a lot of time discussing this idea of a predetermined destiny, and yet it also wants to suggest that this determinism is not good, that having agency is important.
And approximately how hard would you say you've tried?
This is why Malinoe attempts to persuade Eris that she has agency to change her nature.
And I encourage you.
When discussing loyalty and being born into sides of the war, Hecate points out that being born a Titan doesn't mean that one is destined to side with Kronos and other Titans, that even though Prometheus is a Titan and has sided with Kronos, Selene and Hecate are also Titanesses and have not. In fact, not only does the game suggest that agency is important, but in the story itself it seems that there is agency, that the fates do not determine everything.
They are not so powerful as they appeared.
The fates themselves do not want you up there. What shall you do?
For example, Malinoe, despite having a curse as part of her birthright, an inability to stay on the surface, manages to overcome this curse and unlock the second root.
Now, my blood is bound by fate, yet blood runs free. Release me from this realm. Become my key. So mote it be.
Similarly, Kronos has seemingly defeated the fates, first by overcoming the rule of Hades, suggesting that the fates' determinism no longer works, and secondly by defeating the fates themselves, casting them into oblivion, suggesting agency beyond the predetermined fate. In fact, if you get to the epilogue, which I couldn't find the time to do, the fates retire and give up on fate, allowing mortals agency. In the Bible, God's sovereignty over time and destiny is absolute, and individuals cannot have agency to overcome God's predestination. However, using a similar metaphor as before, the Apostle Paul suggests that while Christians don't have agency over God's sovereignty, they do have agency within God's sovereignty. Now, in a great house, there are not only vessels of gold and silver, but also of wood and clay, some for honorable use, some for dishonorable. Therefore, if anyone cleanses himself from what is dishonorable, he will be a vessel for honorable use, set apart as holy, useful to the master of the house, ready for every good work. 2 Timothy chapter 2, verses 20 to 21. Like how Christians can cleanse themselves and set themselves apart for God, Malinoe, Kronos, and many of the other characters in the game try to take agency against what the fates have determined, even if this doesn't fully make sense in the context of the narrative. Hades 2 is a tale of epic proportions that, like the first game, weaves its themes throughout its narrative in clever and hidden ways. In the first video, part 1, we ventured through themes related to family, like family isolation, conflict, and reconciliation. In this video, part 2, we investigated themes of Hades 2 related to time and fate, such as birthright, mistakes of the past, and being free from destiny. While the game develops many of its themes well, particularly the themes related to family, the themes related to fate fail to stick the landing, doing what many stories set in mythological settings do. They end by suggesting that there is agency despite all the time and fate shenanigans, and the determinism used throughout the game. Though Hades 2 was no exception and also suffered from this issue, overall the story was still excellent otherwise, and I enjoyed the storytelling, just like I hope you have enjoyed this video.
Now farewell, and thank you, granddaughter.
That's all I have for you in this video. Bless you guys. Thank you so much for watching, I really appreciate it. If this video blessed you in some way, please consider watching some of my other videos, subscribing, sharing the video with your friends, or sharing with me some of your thoughts in the comments below.